Hi everyone, welcome to Personality Yoda on Friday afternoon here in the UK or Friday morning in America. My name is Becky and I am here with the Jedi Master himself, otherwise known as Yoda, Mr. Steve Cockram. Steve, how are you today?
I am very well. I think when you get to 864, or however old I am on Tatooine, but it's good to see you, Ray, as well. We had a deputy last week, didn't we? Young Luke Skywalker, aka Mike Oakendale, who joined us, but it's much better having you back, and obviously you're far prettier than he is as well, so that's great.
I don't know. I think Mike gives me a run for my money. Steve, tell me what's going on in the UK, what's happening in your world, what's live right now?
Gosh, there's an open-ended question. So it's sunny today. I know you love the Brits, love their weather. So it's sunshine. It's the perfect temperature. If I could have my perfect weather, it would be about 23 degrees in the day and about 14 at night. So for you Americans, that's probably about mid-70s and then about 55 in the evening. So everything is good. My golf is on fire. I'm now into the semi-finals of the club championship, budding to be the first person ever to defend the match play championship. So that means now if I lose in the semi-final, I'm going to have to eat humble pie. But that's pretty much the biggest thing that's happening in my life right now.
This is true. We us Brits do love to talk about the weather. I don't know why, but everywhere you go, if you're going into a shop or something, I was like, the weather is great or the weather is awful. It's really weird, kind of like mutual bonding experience about the weather. But we're having an Indian summer here in the UK, which basically means it's hot, which is amazing because we never have the weather. So we are loving life at the moment. Not quite shorts and t-shirt weather, but getting there.
Yeah, I'm not sure Indian summer is quite as politically correct as it used to be, Ray. But I don't know. I suspect it has colonial roots, so apologies.
I just heard someone use it recently and I was like, oh, interesting. We've got the heat, that's the main thing, which is rare, so we're celebrating.
It's a good job I'm so politically correct and woke and can cope with your upset, so there we go, that's all good.
I expect nothing less, Steve. Good to hear your golf's going well. Yeah. Championships, when's the final?
Finals early November, so we've got a little bit of time yet. But I'll let you know how we go. So pride comes before a fall, so I'm probably going to lose, but there we go. I'll do my best.
Do your best, that's the main thing. Okay, so today on the show, we are talking around relationships and do opposites really attract? So as we go through, please do post questions that you have into the chat and we will pose those to Yoda and get them to answer them for you guys live. Before we do that, Steve, tell us a bit about what your vision is for Personality Yoda and how the show works.
Well, I think the honest answer is I was probably the least emotionally intelligent 30-year-old you'll ever meet. And I look back at how much I got wrong. And in some ways, my journey to being a Jedi Master of really understanding why people behave the way they do came through really just being able to look in the mirror and go, oh my goodness, this is what it's like to be on the other side of me. So as usual, the things I'm learning are usually what I end up teaching. And so therefore my desire for this show is that actually I'd be able to help you, Ray would be able to help you deal with some of the real life issues that you've got in relation to relationships you have in your life. So I'm happy for you to send in scenarios, questions, things like, there's nothing off limits. Well, there is certain things off limits, but very, very little. So things like, I'm struggling with a boss, or I'm this personality. How do I deal with this? First dates. Treat me as your agony Uncle Yoda. Bex has always got lots of issues that she's dealing with, so we can always use those if need be. So I just want it to be as fun as interactive, and I'd rather answer your questions and scenarios than just teach, because I can do that forever, I promise.
There you go, folks. There's an invite to ask the agony uncle or agony Yoda anything you want. Please do post them in the box below. I think that's going to be a new tagline for you there, Steve, or nickname, agony Steve or agony Yoda. I like it. Awesome. So kicking off today's questions around personality and around relationships, is there such a thing as an ideal type or a match made in heaven?
That's a very good question. I think the answer is always there's yes and no. So there are, what I would say to everyone is there is no excuse for not making a relationship work because either you're the same or you're completely different. So it doesn't actually matter what personalities are working together, whether that's in a marriage, whether it's your kids, whether it's a team, whether it's a partnership in a business. In the end, you will always have to work at communication to make that relationship effective. If you are with somebody who's the same as you, so if you marry someone who's the same wiring, the same personality as you, what that usually means is the early years of marriage are a lot easier. Because in the end, when you are simply doing for them what you would like done for you, you're actually getting lucky without realizing why. So because actually you speak each other's communication code, you look at the world in the same way, and you function the same way. The challenge is that often, if you're not careful, you can get lazy and you reinforce each other's blind spots, and you almost choose not to grow as much into later life as you could. Now, if you marry someone who's very, very different to you, you know by now that I'm an ENTP Pioneer Connector, and I married Helen, who's an ISFJ Nurturer Guardian. We could not be more opposite. In the end, what that means is, in the beginning, it feels like we're trying to navigate a level of complexity which is almost hard to comprehend, because I actually have to work out, how do I do everything which is opposite to the way that I would normally engage and behave with a human being? So when you are married to someone who's very, very different to you, if you do not have tools, and if you don't have lenses, and if you don't have resources to help you understand each other and celebrate each other, it's almost inevitable that that relationship will break down in some way. It doesn't mean you will automatically get divorced or separate, because people stay together for different reasons. But I will absolutely guarantee that you will end up with limited expectations in your relationship if you don't have a way of understanding and celebrating the different superpowers that the person that you're engaged with brings. So, long answer to a short question. Is there a marriage made in heaven? No, they all can be. Is it easier if you marry someone the same as you? Yes, but you'll have blind spots and maybe not grow. If you are very, very different, then you have to be very intentional at working at that relationship, because every time you are accidental, you will drift apart. And so therefore, if you are very different, you have to have tools, you have to have resources, you have to have things like Voices, Best Fit, and the other tools that Giant has for you. Because then what you do is you go, I know how to celebrate what my partner brings, and I know how to create an environment where actually I can access Helen's world. It's still conscious competence, by the way. It's really annoying. I find it much easier to hang out with friends who are wired the same as me. Now, that's a terrible confession live on Personality Yoda, but Helen never watches anything like this, so I'll be fine. I find it much easier to be with people who are like me, because I can be accidental and I don't offend anybody. But in the end, the amount of growth that happens in my life, because I'm married 28 years on, somebody who is so different, means that actually by hanging on in there, I think my own self-awareness, and I think the happiness of our children and those who are in the orbit of the Cockram household is much richer, because Helen and I are different than if we were the same. So I don't know what you want to come back with on that, but that's my attempt to answer your question, Ray.
Have to say, Helen is amazing, and life without her would be so much poorer in every single way. So, so what you're saying is, yes, if you're wired the same way, it's a lot easier. However, if you're wired differently, you can also be a match made in heaven. Surely, though, if you're wired differently, that's really helpful in the sense that you have less blind spots, so you're naturally complementing each other's strengths and weaknesses. Thoughts on that?
It's true, as long as you understand what those complementary strengths and weaknesses are, rather than just think that somebody's out to annoy you and spoil your fun. Mm-hmm. So it's amazing how when you are unconsciously incompetent, you can actually cause the other person to wonder, why did I marry them? I mean, I often tell one of my most embarrassing stories is on my honeymoon. So I'm an extrovert, in case you hadn't guessed, who loves loads of people in my life. I love working. I mean, honestly, I'm always helping lots of people. And if I look back, I was 22 when I went on my honeymoon. Helen was only 20. It was scandalous, really, looking back. And after 9 days on honeymoon in Cornwall, Helen said to me, because I was getting a bit restless, there's only me and her. That was it. And I'd done 9 days I'd never gone more than probably 10 hours on my own with one person before. And Helen, my depth, loving, caring, compassionate nurturer, says to me, Steve, well, do you know what, we could go back to Exeter where all our friends and your parents are. And this is the level of emotional unintelligence this Yoda had in those days. I went, I think that's a brilliant idea. Let's go back, because, you know, it's already starting to rain. And to be quite honest, there's only so much sex you can have, I realized by that stage. And we ended up going back to Exeter. Now, looking back, Helen was absolutely crestfallen. This was the introvert nurturer that was thinking, this is the relationship that's going to complete me, depth. And I was saying after 9 days that I was bored, or not that I was bored, but that I just needed more people. So just an example of how hideously wrong you can get it if you don't have tools to understand that actually what I did was deeply offensive, but I didn't mean to. I had no idea. I just assumed everyone was like me, really. And my cutting humor, which for me obviously is hugely amusing and allows me to be the centre of attention, apparently caused huge offence to many of the people on the other side of it. So, you know, yes, opposites attract, but you really need lenses to have to work with it. I think if Helen hadn't been committed to Christian marriage and actually had parents who made it through many, many years, I think she would have given up on me a long time ago. I would say I've been happily married for 28 years, Helen probably for about the last 12. So
I can't believe that. Love that story. Helen is very gracious, basically.
You can be nice about me, Ray, as well, if you want to be.
Oh, you can take it. Okay, so talk to me. I want to talk about first dates in terms of different tips or ideas you have for taking different voices out on first dates. So go through the different voices, creative, pioneer, etc. About tips for really kind of like wooing, sweeping people off their feet if they are that voice type.
Gosh, now I feel like Hitch. Okay, so as always, you're going to have to go to the platform, but I guess you're already there, and find out what your foundational voice, and also find out what the first voice of the person that you're trying to date is. So you're going to have to send them a link to the giant platform just so you can get them to take the 5 voices assessment. But let's assume that you're dealing with a nurturer. So just think for a moment, what is it that a nurturer champions most, and what do they value? So if you think about it, they value relationships, they value harmony, they value sensitivity, they value the sensory world around them. They want you to think that you've treated them as a unique individual. It's not about the kind of flashness of your first date. It's, have you taken the time to think of a location and maybe a dinner or an event which reflects the fact you found out something about them in advance. So the personalization of the experience, find out from maybe their friends on Facebook or someone you know, where do they love going? They'll always have places, they'll always have significant kind of contexts which are meaningful for them, because a nurturer is always storing memory and has amazing access to sensory experience. So, you know, it's not, do you want to jump off the top of a, you know, the restaurant from 10,000 feet and fly down? That's probably not what a nurturer thinks is fun. A nurturer wants to know, are you the perfect gentleman, if it's me? Am I polite? Am I courteous? Am I good at asking questions? Am I, you know, we have a phrase which says, learn to be interested before interesting. Nurturers really want to know, are you a person of integrity? Do you care about them? Are you actually somebody who takes the time to really understand who they are and simply take the time as well to understand their background? So don't forget, nurturers are very strong on their relational history. Be interested in their family, be interested in their background, be interested in the places they've been, be interested in the books they've read, be interested in the memories of their life. And actually, that would be the kind of perfect first date for a nurturer. Somewhere beautiful, somewhere thoughtful, somewhere that showed you really thought about who they are. Bring a gift that actually is appropriate in a way that actually, the more personalized, the better. Because that's the type of thing that really means the world to nurturers.
Thoughtful gifts, that's true. That's a really good point. I'm married to a nurturer, and whenever I bring home, like, I don't know, his favorite pie or cake or whatever, it's like the best day of their lives, best day of his life. It's amazing. Genuinely, thoughtful gifts. Highly recommend that one. Okay, so nurturer, what about creatives?
Okay, so creatives are, if you think about them, they are big picture, they are visionary, they're future orientated, they love the adventure of exploring things that are new, things that basically they haven't done before. So at first date, realize that for a creative, actually sharing their visions of the future, the things that they're excited about, the ideas they're dreaming, the inventions they've got in their head, the things that they're pushing the frontiers of ideas, thoughts, what are they reading, what are they playing with, all of that is really, really important to a creative. So showing that you are somebody who actually is interested in their vision of the future, and again is prepared to ask good questions. Don't forget as well, creatives very rarely say what they mean when they speak first. So you'll have to learn how to ask clarifying questions and again help them pull out what it is they're passionate about. They will often not really mind where you meet, but in some ways, if it can be an inspirational environment, I would maybe go take them to the top of a big tower, or somewhere where it's an inspirational vista, or something quirky, something that they may not have done before, something which is an experience, but anything other than what is ordinary standard as your typical restaurant or your typical whatever it might be. So they'll never mind if you surprise them with something that they weren't expecting. That's often part of the creative adventure for a creative. And then you ask them, I often say to them, if I would invest any amount of money, if I had unlimited resources, say it that way, and I would access all of my relationships, all of my networks, and I would fund it, what's the vision that you would most love to see happen in and through the work that you would do? Because every creative is an idealist. They always want to see a more just society. They always want to see people on the margins cared for, and actually giving them a chance to share something of their heart, their values, their passions, and letting them dream is a really important part of showing that you love them, you care about them, you're interested in them, and you'll take the time to listen. So that's how you manipulate. Sorry, that's how you have a great first date with a creative.
Tongue there. So talking something out of the box, something unusual, and really taking the time to get to know them and ask those clarifying questions. Love it. Okay, talking about guardians. Top tips for dating guardians or first dates for guardians.
We'll be on time. That'll be the first one. Guardians will be very, very punctual, and be neat, be tidy, dress appropriately, because guardians will always be looking for, do you live their values? So the guardians are they're about truth, they're about integrity, they're about who I say I am is what I do. So if I said I would be there at 10 to 12, I will be there at 10 to 12. If you're late, you're already undermining your influence. And I think as well with the guardian, it's recognize that actually they will have questions to ask you. So in a sense, guardians will have already done an analysis and probably a spreadsheet to work out whether you're an appropriate date. So you've already come through some of their filters of things that they would say, in order for me to feel comfortable dating someone, they would need to have done this, 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 this. But guardians very rarely communicate warmth first time. So in some ways, allow them to do their due diligence. So I would almost invite the guardians, when I meet them, I would go somewhere which was relatively conservative, where I knew the food would be great, where I knew the ambiance would be appropriate, and I knew that they would feel safe, that I was not trying to be some flash person, I'm not trying to flash money, I'm not trying to make it ostentatious. I would find somewhere that is relatively safe, private, conservative, and I would dress accordingly on my first date. And then what I would do is I would go, I know I'm going to let you ask the first 5 questions, because I know you're probably wondering, am I for real? Do I really look like I did in the picture? And actually give them a chance to go, I want you to do your due diligence. I want you to ask the questions, and I'm perfectly happy to let you go first. So what would you most like to know about me? So that's one bit. Now, if you're going to be interested in them, recognize that guardians will always measure their value through the tasks that they do. So a guardian will happily talk about their work with you. They will happily talk about the achievements of their life that they're most proud of. They will often, if they have family, that will be a really important part of who they are. So being interested in their story, in their history, let them tell you some of the things that have shaped them the most, because they'll enjoy talking about the history and often their achievements. So I often say to them, what are you most proud of all the things you've achieved along the way? Talk to me about some of the highlights where you won, or where you felt really that you achieved something significant. I wouldn't go too deep too soon on the emotional side of things. That's easy for me as a pioneer, because that's not my sweet space anyway. But if you're going to ask them to go deep and unlock, and how are you feeling about this, and where have you felt most vulnerable in your life, you may find that that's a little bit early for the average guardian on the first date. Don't try and hit it out of the park. You're not looking for a home run on the first date with a guardian. You're looking to get to first base, and you're looking to establish the foundations for future dates and future relationships, because a guardian will usually start with a fair degree of suspicion that actually there's probably a reason why you're single, and why you're interested in dating them. And if they're really serious, they're probably going to have a private detective vet you to make sure that you are legit and genuine before they really commit. So there we go. Sorry, guardians, I'm being a bit harsh, but
skepticism there. Hey, in my shirt or dress is the answer. Okay, so that's guardians. We've done 3 of them. Talk to me about connectors before we go on to our favorite lovely colors.
Well, connectors are the easiest date of all, because basically as long as it's exciting, fun, and you're interested in them, connectors are open to pretty much anything. So an experience, an adventure, the fact that you're going to organize it and not tell them what it's going to be about, all of that is hugely exciting. So try and find something as a context or a place which actually has a vibe, has an atmosphere. Connectors love being around where other people are, even if they're not necessarily going to talk to them all, but they'll often enjoy, a bar that's full or a restaurant. Don't take them somewhere where it's just them, because they come over all of a quiver if they haven't got an audience. And you'll often find that on their way to the bathroom, they will have got to know the barman. They'll talk to so don't be offended. Don't be offended if your connectors are appearing to be engaged elsewhere. It's just part of who they are. Every connector I know is passionate about something. And in the end, the question which unlocks every connector, if you're prepared to ask it, is, what are you most excited about right now? So in the end, connectors love people, and they love people to love them. So the more you communicate your interest in them, the more you communicate your love of their stories, the more you're interested in what they're passionate about, and you ask the clarifying questions. Connectors love people who are prepared to really take the time to be interested in them. So lots of facial expressions, lots of active listening. Now, if it's a really mature connector, they may ask you some questions as well. If they're not that mature and you keep asking them questions, they may go on for a long time talking about what they are passionate about. But they have hearts of gold, and they're almost always relational entrepreneurs. So again, having some good questions. So, what are you most proud of in your life so far? What are the things that you'd most love to do with your life? They're another ones where if you said, if I gave you unlimited resources, what would we be doing to change the world? Even a sense of going, if I could describe your perfect holiday for me, what would it be? Tell me about it. So connectors are always fun to be with. They will always be wanting to surprise you as well. It's never dull with a connector, because they really, really care about you having a good time as well. The key is help them be emotionally intelligent enough to ask you a few questions as well if they get too excited about what they're passionate about.
I love it. That sounds like a great date with a connector, by the way.
Yeah.
Sounds to be a lot of fun.
Yep.
Finally, last but not least, our lovely cuddly pioneers who all know and love. Talk to me about first date ideas for them.
First dates for pioneers. Well, you've already made an achievement if the pioneers agree to date you, because pioneers are very, very selective in that you need to be top of the food chain. They have to be interested in you, and probably you have to be very attractive, because pioneers are relatively superficial when it comes to those things in the beginning. So the most important thing for a pioneer date is it's almost to allow to recognize you're going to do a lot of talk about things which are not particularly personal. So asking them about what they do, asking them about what they're proud of, asking them what they're reading, asking them about some of the, those abilities for them to tell you how competent they are. So every pioneer on a first date wants you to respect them, not just because of what they look like, but they want you to respect their intellect and their strategic genius, in their humble opinion. So one of the ways if you get to know your sort of pioneer date, one of the things they love doing most is they love solving your problems. So actually being able to say, do you know, I've been really struggling with this in a work context, or I've been really trying to make a breakthrough in this area of the business I'm involved in. And you sound like a person who probably has ideas that could help me. Do you have any ideas of how I can make this breakthrough, get better in this area, or whatever it is? So affirming the competence of pioneers, inviting them to be strategic consultants to your world, giving them the opportunity to help what you're doing go better. That is almost the perfect date for a pioneer, because they will only stay at the relational level for so long before they want to move to task of achievement. So asking them how their business is going, inviting them to be a consultant to your life, and ultimately, in the end with a pioneer, they will want quality. So if you're dating a pioneer, they're not going to want to go somewhere cheap. They want to go somewhere which communicates the level of respect you have for them, to take them somewhere where they can have great food. Usually they will know their wines and they'll know when it's cheap or not. So it's always worth, if you want to impress a pioneer, spending a little bit of extra money, because in the end, that's communicating to them in their love language that you actually think they are very, very valuable and that you feel honored to be on a date with them. So how does that work, Ray? Would that work for you?
You read my mail. I didn't realize that the expense thing was a pioneer thing, though. I didn't realize other voices didn't value that in the same way. I just thought it was, clearly, if you're going to impress me, you gotta put up a good show. But I didn't realize that was just primarily a pioneer thing. You learn something new every day, hey? I love it. They are some awesome tips for anyone that's thinking about dating any of the different types of voices. And if you don't know their voice order, then send them over to the platform where they can take that assessment on Ascend. Now, I have a great question here for you, Steve, from Amy.
Mm-hmm.
She's interested in hearing how you coach children on the topic of potential dating partners. Any advice there?
I have 3 daughters, so the answer is you're not. No, that's not true. I think that how do I coach my daughters? Well, it's really interesting because I think I know them, but in some ways I would rather they had the choice of actually finding someone that they really liked. In some ways, I would rather be a coach to them when they've actually started to make some choices of their own, because I'm a very, very strong character, as I'm sure you're aware. And my girls are awesome. I don't want them thinking that somehow I am vetting all of their potential dates. So I would almost go the other way, and I would celebrate them. I'd make sure they're safe, and I'd make sure that some of the ground rules are in that. But I would just be excited and encourage them to go out and meet people rather than think, is this the one? I'd go out and actually get to know people, actually allow them to take you out and to ask good questions and do some of that chemistry piece, because what people look like is usually where it starts, but in the end it's often the chemistry of actually enjoying being together that in the end will last a lot longer. So I will let my girls choose their own dates as long as they're safe. If they're getting serious, then maybe I might like to meet this particular character. But in the end, I think let them come to me and ask the questions rather than the other way around, because otherwise I don't want to be overbearing, shall we say.
I'm sure you would never come across as that, Steve.
Oh, I'm sure I could. Let's know yourself to leave yourself, Ray.
I love it. So we are drawing to the end of our time together today. But if we'd love to hear your thoughts on any topics that you'd like us to cover, any questions on anything to do with personality, whether that's how do I manage my boss, or my wife is this character, etc. Please do send those into the email address on the screen below, personalityyoda@giantworldwide.com, and we will address them in all the calls.
And we'd love to hear if basically you use any of these any of the things I said today about first dates, then please could you email to personalityyoda@giantworldwide.com, because we would love, or post it maybe in the LinkedIn and Facebook if you watched it there live. I would love to know whether my tips actually work. So I'm not looking for commission. I've got a second voice connector. I just need affirmation if I've helped you make a good connection.
I love it. Yeah, please do send us any stories of how you put this into practice as well, like Steve said. So we'll be back here same time next week. And next week, we're going to be talking about parenting and how can you know the voice type or the personality of your child, and why on earth is that important. So join us here next Friday, and we'll be back speaking about that. Any last words from you, Steve?
No, I'm great. Thank you very much, Ray. Lovely to have you back.
Thanks. What can I say? We'll see you guys next week. Take care.